Hello and welcome back to PhDear Diary. I'm Andy Salkeld and this is my kind of video blog whilst I am undertaking a PhD at Leeds Beckett University. This is week 3, so episode 3, and it's kind of, things have started really kicking off now. I've had kind of my first meetings. I've been sorting out my development plan, all sorts of things like that. And it's slowly coming together. It's a lot more kind of, it's far less structured than anything I've done before, which requires a lot more personal kind of commitment, personal oversight and dedication to it. There's no fixed deadlines. It's very much just you do this and you kind of work to your own boundaries, which is hard. I certainly struggle with it because it's very much like how long is a piece of string in kind of the vernacular, and you kind of, I'm doubting myself, but at the same point I'm not doubting myself because the way academic work is kind of done is you use peer review and cite other references. So what I'm slowly developing is kind of a database of references, which are studies that I'm trying to replicate or inform what I'm trying to do, which is hard enough in itself because trying to find all that, consume all the knowledge and information in these studies, in these papers, and then synthesize it into a course of action and a design to then build my own study is very challenging. But that's what I'm doing, and that's kind of where I am. And it's interesting. Like I feel I'm getting somewhere. So this week I actually have my kind of initial ideas that I'm going to briefly talk through, just because I figure it's a good way to introduce people to the idea of what I'm looking at and what has excited me and where I think this is going. So I've always been interested in kind of why things happen and the impact thereof onto mental health outcomes for individuals. And what I was kind of introduced to is the idea of norms. So these are very much what you would expect. They are social patterns that govern behaviour. So what is normal in a situation? And there's a few different types of them. So there's the objective norms. So these are what are. So these are things like regularities in action and behaviour that are sometimes and often either rewarded or punished, and that sometimes get institutionalized through either of like law or something becomes sacred in kind of easy terms to understand. So these are what are. So for example, driving on the left or right hand side of the road is now, it started off as a trend, but now it is in law. Breaking that is punished, and you keep doing it because that's what you've always done and you've seen it is a successful behavior. Okay, so that's kind of the application of various things like operant conditioning and so on playing effect on you. So those are the objective norms. Then you have subjective, which I briefly spoke about last week, that's broken down into two categories, which are perceived descriptive and perceived injunctive. And these are how an individual perceives what is the objective reality. And again, this is where it gets complicated because it may feel like they're describing objective, but that it's their perception of the objective. And that's why it changed, because it comes down to what that person sees. And that varies from individual to individual. So the perceived descriptive is what is what people perceive others doing. So one of the kind of classic experiments that's been done in this is when you see someone litter or leave rubbish on the ground, that is kind of, you see that as the normal course of action, and therefore you are more likely to litter. And this kind of, this has been experimented on, and it kind of plays out, which is really fascinating. But then there's the perceived injunctive, which is what you should do in a situation. So this is what you perceive others approving and disapproving of. And this again is another way of looking at it. So this is where, so taking the littering example, this is where you see a mostly clean environment, and someone picks up a piece of litter from the ground and puts it in a trash bin. And then you are kind of reinforced that actually that person does not approve of littering or disapproves of littering, and therefore that indicates to you the injunctive norm in the situation. And they both have very different effects and different kind of levels of influence on people and their behaviours. And then outside of that, there are personal norms. And these are norms held by an individual that are often kind of values, and they kind of self-regulate in a way, which is where it's kind of, where it's the super ego's shoulds, I should do this because I believe it, versus the id's wants, I want to do this. And this is where people will have kind of internal conflict where they want to do one thing, but they should be doing another thing, so on. So this is kind of norms. And what these do is they govern behaviour in certain regards. And what I'm interested in finding out is whether stress has become a norm within workplaces, and like maybe wider, but workplaces are a place where stress exists commonly. And this is something that's kind of never really been touched on. The bit that I am struggling with at present is whether stress is a is kind of a behaviour like littering in a way, because obviously that's been tested. But I believe it's the sort of thing, it feels like something that there are stressed behaviours, but it's whether those, because it's not a choice, because it is a state of being rather than an actual behaviour itself or an actual action itself, I am finding it hard to kind of understand for certain. But at the same point, if you ask, like, and hearsay, not science, hearsay, if you ask someone whether stress is normal within their organisational culture, they will be able to answer yes or no. If you say roughly how stressed, they will be able to give you a number, which kind of plays it out as you would expect. So what I'm looking at, or what I want to look at, is say, well, if stress has become a social norm, and if stress is normative, then we should be able to measure it as we can with other social norms, and we should be able to manipulate it as we can with other social norms. So that's kind of the question. If stress is normative, then we can do all these things to it. So what I want to do, what I'm in the process of doing now, and this will be kind of next week, the week after, is looking at how we measure it. So regularity. So if we break it down, so measuring the objective norm, are there regularities in it? And this is objective. This isn't subjective. This is objective. And this is very much, in your workplace, are people stressed? Not in your opinion, are they stressed? Is there stress diagnosis? Is there something objective? Now this will be harder to measure because people may not talk about it, people may not know the answer, but that's something we can't. That's an objective question. But then it's kind of like, is there sanctioning or reward? So again, not perceived. Are there rules and regulations within written documents somewhere or verbally? Is there something that says if you are stressed, get rewarded or sanctioned? Again, I don't think we will find many of these, but it's a question we need to ask. The next bit, the institutionalization, I think these might exist. So this is where, so I don't think there will be any formal laws or rules or like code of conduct. You should not be stressed. You should stop when you are stressed. I don't think those will exist. But the sacralization, so this is where something becomes kind of intoned in story and almost becomes a right in the business. This is where I think things might exist because, and I don't think it's going to be labeled as stress, but I think people will tell, or there will be stories of extra stressful times and deadlines and things like that. And I think those may exist, which gives a sense of an objective norm. But again, this is going to be very hard to measure precisely. But if we can measure it, and there are ways to do it, it's ways that we can kind of, like, ultimately we're taking a concept and we're going to pick little bits of it at a time and slowly build up a greater model of it. Now then we move on to measuring the subjective. And this is where it kind of, and again, we break it down into descriptive and injunctive. So this is where we can actually look at there have been lots of measures of these before. So what should people do when they are stressed, or what should be the course of action, and what do people do? So this is very much if you see someone stressed, what do you do? If someone else sees someone stressed, what should they do? Is stress supported, unsupported, both by yourself or by others within your organization? And there are various studies like this which check kind of approval or disapproval of behaviours. One of the good ones was Walsh 2012, where they developed the civility norm questionnaire, and I'm thinking of just kind of adapting that to see whether stress is a perceived norm, or a perceived / subjective injunctive norm. And I think that'll be quite interesting because I reckon people will perceive stress is normative, but I don't know whether they'll see it as a, like, being more stressed or being less stressed is better. And then we're going to look at measuring values. So how do individuals what are individuals' values with regarding stress? And again, there are some very good studies on this. I've got written down here Calgreen and de Groot, and this is where they use kind of personal norm questionnaires about what are your values regarding it. Do you feel being stressed is okay? Do you feel it is a positive experience to be stressed, etc.? And these will shape action and behavior. Great. That's measuring it. Then we move on to manipulating it. And this is where we replicate existing studies. And what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to look at existing theories of how norms work in practice and then replicate them within a stress work environment setting. And the main one I've kind of found is the focus theory of normative action. And what this essentially says is norms only influence behaviour when they are salient. So when you're thinking about it, when you're actually aware of the normal situation. So what we do here is we say, right, we are going to make the norm salient by telling someone about it, and then we are going to see whether they act or don't act according with the norm. So there's a few ways to do this, and a few different ways to do it, and a few different ways to kind of consider it. So very simple one is from Reno 93, which is basically you describe a setting. So you would describe a stressed office environment, and you would say, what is this drawing your attention to? The office is stressed. The office is not stressed. It is okay to be stressed. It is not okay to be stressed. And then your response is basically whether you are identifying with the descriptive norm or the injunctive norm. Whether I'm talking about what you do or what you should do. And then similarly, elsewhere you have other people see a study where you describe one person is stressed, another is assisting them, seeking to reduce stress, and how someone responds to that is very much what is this image bringing to you? That people are stressed, that people are not stressed, that people are that it is okay to be stressed, or that it is not okay to be stressed. And again, here you'd kind of predict that because you are showing someone trying to discourage stress in the environment and to help someone who is stressed, you would theorize that the injunctive norm would be active in this situation, and that people would say that it is not okay to be stressed. Again, this is theory. This is trying to replicate what already exists. So then another one is kind of describe a situation. What would you do? So this is where we go beyond what is normal, so what is normative, and look into how those norms drive behavior. So if you walk into a stressed office environment, are you more likely to become stressed yourself, maintain not being stressed yourself? If you are in a relaxed work environment, are you more likely to become stressed yourself or remain calm yourself? And again, you would theorize that if someone walks into a stressed office environment, they are likely to become stressed. So here, someone is in a descriptive setting of a descriptive norm of stress. And then you check injunctive. If you saw someone trying to support someone who was stressed to reduce them to a level of calm, would you be more likely to be stressed or remain calm yourself? And again, here you're making the norm, the injunctive norm, salient in their mind, seeing that it is disapproved upon to be stressed. Are they likely to try to maintain their level of calm in that environment or become stressed themselves? And that's one way of doing it. Then similarly you can replicate the extension beyond it, because in With the descriptive norm, it is only when it is salient, it is only effective within the environment in which it is salient in. So what this means, again, I'm still trying to figure all this out myself, is if you go to, if you're in a stressed environment, the descriptive norm is people are stressed. You therefore want to be stressed yourself because then you're part of the in-group, etc. If you then move to a relaxed environment, so different environment, different descriptive norm, but the people are relaxed there, and you are the descriptive norm of the previous environment doesn't carry with you between environments. So the descriptive norm has changed, and therefore it is no longer salient. So that could be, and again, this makes sense. When you are walking from one part of the office where it's stressed, it's busy, the telephone's ringing, everyone's talking loudly, everyone's talking fast, and it is just continually stressed, and you feel stressed yourself. But then when you walk into a room and it's calm, it's quiet, people are talking moderately, it's fine, even though it may be stressed elsewhere, you calm down because the descriptive norm doesn't carry with you. And then, but with the injunctive norm, when you talk about how, and again, this is very complex when we look within organizations, because obviously the social norm of one team may differ from the social norm of the next, which may differ from the global or the organizational norm of this. And this is where it gets challenging, and this is where I'm trying to figure it out. So bear with me. I don't know the answers to this. So we're getting there. But with the injunctive norm, so you're in one department where it's stressed, or you're in one room where it is stressed, and you see someone trying to de-stress someone else, trying to support them, trying to help them, trying to lower their levels of stress actively. You can then move to, and this could be in a calm environment where one person is stressed, calm environment, or in a stressed environment. When you move to another environment, regardless of whether stressed or not, the concept of what should happen and what the norm should be, which is non-stressed because you have seen someone, you have seen the injunctive norm action in effect, that carries with people beyond environments. So again, we can test this. Does this carry with you from one environment to another? You are in this setting. Imagine you're in this setting and you see this happen, and then you go into another setting. Are you likely to do this or not this? So we manipulate it, we prod it, and see if we can change it. And then one I just read about, which was quite interesting, was from De Groot, who looked at this from a kind of environmental impact perspective. And what he said here was, we look at the intention of action. Because the theory of reasoned behaviour, or the theory of reasoned action, I think it is, basically says that the greatest influence on whether someone undertakes or doesn't undertake an action is whether they intend to do the action or not. Which kind of makes sense. If you have the intention to do something, then you will likely do it. Kind of common sensey, but makes sense. And again, I might be wrong in all this. This is the problem with PhDs, or particularly just doing the research around it, is everything is theory right now, and I'm trying to figure it out, which is hard. So the next bit is, so what we do here is we provide information. So we say, due to recent study, which is fake, due to a recent study, it has been found that 80% of people at work are stressed. Okay, I have just described a descriptive norm that says people at work are stressed, which carries a very powerful message that there are lots of people doing this thing. And the theory of kind of operant conditioning, what is successful in an environment, what is most likely to succeed in an environment because the majority of people are doing it, motivates an individual to do the same thing. Same with kind of social identity theory. You want to hold the same attributes as the group you are in. If I tell you the majority of people working in your organization are stressed, okay? Do you perceive that you would get more stressed? Do you perceive that you wouldn't? And again, this is where the kind of breakdown with stress happens, because stress isn't an intended action. Stress is a kind of an experience, like it's a state of being, I believe is what it's described as. But we can kind of circumvent it. Do you think you will be more stressed? Do you think you won't? Because even though it's not intended action, it's kind of an unconscious action. You would become more stressed about X, Z, and so on. So we start just poking away at these little things. And I think once I've kind of got a lot of this thought out, then it's a kind of... So I've got ways of measuring stress, objectively, subjectively, and personally. Great. So we can look at stress norms from that perspective. Then we can try to manipulate it. Good. If we find out that stress is becoming a norm, then we can look at how it interacts with other norms. So take exactly what we've done for stress, but then do it with regards to, say, incivility or aggression or cooperation, just all these other actions that take place within an organization. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, right, these are the different norms of business. How do all these different norms trickle down and feed into the idea that of stress, anxiety, and stigma towards mental health? Because in the case of a stress norm, you would predict that a high stress norm or a normative behavior of stress in an organization would likely lead to stress-related outcomes in individuals. Because of the prognostic effect of and the comorbidity of stress and anxiety, or stress and other mental health conditions, you would expect it to have an indirect relationship with a positive indirect relationship with anxiety or mental health outcomes. And then with regards to stigma, and this is the bit that's a bit complicated, is I don't quite know what I would expect here, because in a situation of kind of attitudes and behavior, if stress is resulting in a positive work aspect, so people are delivering more, people are working more, if productivity is going up, then we would expect that the stigma towards stress or things that deliver stress might actually be lower, because it is promoted within a work environment. If, however, it is negative, has negative impact, etc., stigma may be higher towards it. And what we can slowly do is we can look at all these norms and say, how are they feeding down to an individual? Because if we can work out different norms within different teams and how these are all influenced, we can say, well, actually, how do we correct these? And we can use normative communication to remove them. And this was one of the most fascinating parts, or to adjust them, of some of the reading, because what some of the studies by, I believe it was Cialdini, did this. Negative phrasing of injunctive norms is the most powerful and has the most impact on action. So what I mean by this, because people pay more attention to negative phrasing. That is just the way it is. It becomes more salient and people focus on whatever is said more if you say it negatively. And injunctive norms are both more powerful and have wider impact, because it's what people should do, not what people do. So if you say, if you are saying things like, people, I believe the example is something like, people shouldn't leave fires unattended in parks. Suddenly you were like, okay, I shouldn't do that. And you're suddenly like, okay, I won't do that, because I've been referred to as the majority of people, and it's negatively phrased. So maybe we can change communication here. And this is where it suddenly got very real for me. Now, I've done a lot of kind of presentations on mental illness stigma, impact of like mental health on workplaces, and suicide prevention. And almost all the literature talks about frequency. 1 in 4 people suffer from a common mental health condition. 1 in 6 suffer from a mental health condition each. I'm making up the statistics here. Like I think it was 1 person every 13 seconds or something dies from suicide. But in that and suddenly it is regrettably frequent. And what I hadn't realized, which is in effect, is when you are saying something is regrettably frequent, like mental health diagnoses, like suicide, anything like that, what you are actually saying to people nestled within that is lots of people are doing this. And because of things like social identity theory, group belonging, everything like that, people actually people are influenced by it being a reasoned course of action that many people take, which increases its acceptability and increases the chance of it occurring. And that is a scary thing to realize, that it's being said all the time with regards to many things, and it can be influencing people. Could be influencing. However you want to phrase it. And that's actually quite scary, that we are not communicating in the best way possible to actually save lives. And that's something that matters to me, and it's something that I want to try and do what I can to correct, because lives matter, and that's why I'm doing this PhD. So yeah, lots of thoughts this week. Like, I wanted to kind of deep dive and share quite a lot about where my thoughts are with this, what's going on, and it's exciting. I think I will feel comfortable when I have my first survey written and I have my confirmation of registration done. So that's kind of the big process piece that I have to do in a couple of months. But I want to get working on it now because I want to design my first study and I want to kind of expand on top of it what I did for my presentation, etc. And it's eye-opening doing this, and it's something that I think a lot of people would benefit from. Just kind of spending time actually dedicating to learning and new knowledge creation. But yeah, outside of this, everything is outside of the actual PhD. Everything's going well. I had my birthday last week. It was good. Saw friends, enjoyed time together, and this weekend is relatively quiet. Just kind of doing life, house admin stuff that needs to happen, but generally all good. And yeah, I think that's about it. But with a lot of this stuff, it's processing internally, writing it down on silly bits of paper that kind of try to hold it together. I'll have a supervision, well, it's not a formal supervision, but just a discussion on Tuesday, where I will say, this is broadly my plan. Where do I draw the lines? Because there's a lot of this, and it's probably multiple experiments, but at the same point, kind of want to just do it all because efficiency. So yeah, that's where I am. It's all good, and I will probably see you in another week. So I hope you found that useful and informative, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Take care.